On your Thursday episode of Locked On Raptors, it's the return of our favorite parlor game here on this show. It's what's more likely, including conundrums like, is it more likely that the Pistons finish ahead of the Raptors or that the Raptors finish ahead of the Heat? That and more coming up on today's show. Thanks for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day, and it is, Thursday, September the 26th. I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for going on 11 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the website that sucks at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors. And, of course, you can join us over on the Locked On Raptors Discord server, the place to be this season. That's where I'll be hanging out, watching games, offering thoughts, and, talking with the sickos who are, just sick as ever. Come join the sickos in the sicko department over on the Discord. Again, free to join, link in the description of the podcast. We would love to see you in there. Of course, you can find the show on your audio app of choice. We're on YouTube. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, etc., etc. Much appreciated when you go ahead and do that. And today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And we will get started here on your Thursday edition of the show, playing a game of What's More Likely, one of our favorites here on the show, as we mercifully have Media Day in like 4 days' time. We're going to have new stuff and new developments to talk about, and very much looking forward to that. But let's dig into some sort of big picture topics here for your Toronto Raptors. Some more micro stuff, too, as it pertains to the Bruce Brown injury, which we'll get to coming up in the second segment. We've got talk about the trade deadline. Yes, we're already starting talking about the trade deadline because that's what you got to do in the transaction industrial complex, baby. And we got all sorts of fun on tap today. We have, of course, with us to do our What's More Likely's today, our pal Jamar Hinds, the God of the Game recap from Raptors Republic. Jamar, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing good, and it's a great time for basketball. WNBA playoffs are in full swing. My Storm are done, so I'm representing the Lynx. And basically, this is going to overlap with the NBA preseason. So as soon as the WNBA finals are done, the NBA regular season is here. So there's no gap in basketball whatsoever, and I love it.
We love it. We love the hoop, baby. Speaking of the hoop, let's talk about the hoop your Toronto Raptors might play this season or are going to play this season. Whether it will be good hoop or not, still very much to be determined. It's probably going to skew more towards bad than good, but I think there'll be some good stuff to latch onto. That said, there are some ways this thing can go poorly. There are also ways this thing can kind of be a little bit better than we anticipated. And so that brings me to our first What's More Likely for today. Jamar, what's more likely? The Detroit Pistons finish ahead of the Toronto Raptors in the Eastern Conference standings, or the Toronto Raptors finish ahead of the Miami Heat? Of course, the Heat feel like they are the ugly duckling of the playoff teams in the Eastern Conference this year. They kind of feel like they're going to be the 8th seed at the moment. Maybe they can, strive and do Miami Heat things, but it's been a while since they were a real regular season juggernaut. And we know, of course, the Detroit Pistons, they've had a rough go here. They seem to have a bit more of a sensible roster, although their front court remains something to be desired. There's going to be a whole lot of Tobias Harris on this team, and I don't know if Tobias Harris is any good anymore. We can get into the reasons why the Pistons might overachieve or why they might still stink out loud, but what is more likely here for you, Jamar? The Raptors have themselves a disappointing season where they don't finish ahead of the Pistons, or they surprise and catch up to an aging, decrepit Miami Heat roster. What you got?
Well, let's start with Miami. The whole Jimmy Butler era, they've been like a 5 seed, a 6 seed. They were a 1 seed one year, and they're like an 8 seed. And then last year they were in the play-in again. I forget what seed they were. I think they ended up being the 7 seed or something like that. But yeah, they have always been the team that kind of underachieves in the regular season and then overachieves in the playoffs. So I guess it would be fair to say, like you said, maybe an 8 seed, that is possible. And then Detroit, it's funny because coming into last season, Detroit was a really trendy pick to take a jump, which is
Mhm.
why they paid Monty Williams all that money. They were because they've had a string of lot of like top five pick. Actually, they were like the worst. They had the worst record in the league a couple of those years, and they would always end up getting like the fifth pick, which is why taking kind of backfires sometimes with these new lottery rules where you're not guaranteed to get the top three or top two or first overall pick that you desire. So, that the Pistons have been on the bad side of a lot of that. But Monty Williams is gone. Bye-bye to that crazy contract that they still have to pay him. And I feel that they, maybe it's crazy on my part, but I feel that they still have a chance to do what people expected them to be last year. Now, will they be better than the Raptors? Oh, I got to make a decision here. I feel that there's still a possibility that Detroit can take a jump. And I don't think that the Raptors, unless like Jimmy Butler has some sort of fallout, which he is prone to do, see Minnesota. Yeah. I feel Miami's just a team that's going to be locked in that 7-8 seed, and I don't think the Raptors are that good. So I would say, and don't hate me for this, I would say it might be more likely that Detroit keeps pace with Toronto. Now, I guess for the sake of the game, I have to pick that they would have a better.
Be declarative, Jamar. Come on, stop sitting on the fence, baby.
I am beating around the bush. Okay. It is more likely that Detroit has a better record than Toronto. I wouldn't be shocked at that. I can't see the Raptors having a better record than the Heat, even though I just said that they have the tendency to underachieve in the regular season. So that's my pick, unfortunately.
Yeah, totally. I mean, as much as the Heat underachieve, they still have Eric Spoelstra, and he's a wizard. And you could argue that them finishing like 5th or 6th or 7th in a lot of these years with the sort of haphazard rosters they've had is actually kind of impressive and not really all that much of an underachievement. And I think they kind of just count on their ability to be a playoff team when Jimmy Butler decides he cares and all of that. I also think it's more likely the Pistons finish ahead of the Raptors. Of course, with this exercise, it's two extremes, right? Neither is all that likely to happen here. But I do think, Cade Cunningham, he showed some signs last year. He's still pretty inefficient, and I don't really trust a lot of the guys on this team. I think Jaden Ivey, I'm pretty much out on as someone who's really going to pop. I think they're rolling out Asar Thompson and probably Ron Holland and Jalen Duren. There's a lot of non-shooting on this team, as much as Tobias Harris brings some. I know they have Tim Hardaway, but like Tim Hardaway is not someone who I'm thinking about as like a game changer all that much. He's, someone the Mavs were eager to cast off. I think Malik Beasley, pretty much just a straight, I'm only going to shoot. I think he's much better on a team with like super high-end talent like the Bucks had than he will be on this sort of middling talent team in Detroit. They got Simone Fontecchio. They have Paul Reed. They have some interesting vets that they've kind of brought in. But I still think that front court's pretty light. There's going to be a lot of beef stew. I don't think beef stew's that good. And I think there's, lots of reason to question the Pistons here. That said, I'm taking the Pistons finishing ahead of the Raptors as the more likely outcome here, just because the Heat have the devil magic and the Eric Spoelstra factor. And I think the Raptors, the Raptors are thin, right? If they take one injury to the wrong guy, namely Jakob Poeltl, of course, Scotty Barnes.
We saw what happened with that.
Too. 100%. Like they are so dependent on Jakob Poeltl in particular that if he misses an extended stretch of time, that's going to pile up the losses while he's out, and that could see them fall beneath the Pistons. I do think there's a chance the Pistons end up being the best of the bad, like sort of sub Raptors-y teams in the Eastern Conference. And, you might want to lump the Raptors into that group anyway. And I think the sort of opinion on them ranges from they're going to be awful to they're going to be like a mid-30s win team. I think the Pistons are better than the Nets. They're better than the Wizards. I think they're probably better than the Bulls because I think the Bulls suck. I think they're going to be a disaster, especially if Pat Williams is missing time with that foot injury that seems to just not be able to sort of shake him or he can't shake.
They're trying to
Yeah.
They're trying to
No.
kind of mend defenses with Zach LaVine, but Zach LaVine over the last few years have been kind of injury prone, so you don't know how that's going
Yeah.
to go either.
I also just think like a Kobe White, Josh Giddey, Vooch, Zach LaVine lineup is going to be abjectly terrible at defense. And I think that's going to hurt them as much as they might have a little bit of offensive juice. Maybe I'm underestimating the Bulls because I do think their offense could be fine. But I think it's more likely that the Pistons kind of jump up the standings a little bit. And if they're 12th, they have a shot to be ahead of the Raptors. So I think that's the answer here. Although I do think there is a world in which everything breaks right for the Raptors. They get some sort of surprising bench contributions. Maybe one of their rookies pops. Maybe Davion Mitchell proves that he can be a reliable bench guy that we've yet to see to this point, and they become more of a serious threat for that 8th seed. But yeah, I think Pistons ahead of the Raptors is the more likely of these two outcomes. We'll come back on the other side, Jamar, and we're going to get into a second one, which is all about Bruce Brown's injury and the opportunity that will afford for a couple of guys waiting in the wings for the Raptors. We'll get to that coming up in just 1 second. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks, the single best and number one daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you got to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your picks still alive. That's pretty awesome. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, they're safe and secure. When your picks hit, you can get your money back in as quick as 15 minutes. Again, just 2 to 6 players on a given entry, and you can make some cake. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDINNBA and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDINNBA on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Game Time, the single best place to buy tickets for the sports you want to see. And it's not just sports. You got theater, you got concerts, you got comedy. It's all there for you. I'm going to the Doughboys podcast this weekend at Danforth Music Hall. I'm sure you can go find some tickets for that on Game Time. I bought tickets for Danforth stuff all the time on Game Time. It's a great place to go, not just for sports, of course. There's all kinds of other events you might want to go to, and Game Time makes it easy. They filter out the fluff, so you know only get incredible deals with the Game Time Picks feature, and you get great seats, so you don't have to go and waste time searching through thousands of tickets. They just show you the best deals, and you can pick one of those. It's awesome. Of course, they have seat views, so you know exactly what you're going to be seeing when you sit down in your seats before you ever get to the venue. And they have Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDINNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Back at it here, playing What's More Likely with our pal Jamar Hinds from Raptors Republic, the god of the game recap, whose recaps will return to our lives very soon. We're like a week and a half away from the first Raptors preseason game against the Wizards on October the 6th. It's all very thrilling. All right, Jamar, another What's More Likely for you. This one kind of directly tied to the current state of the team and the injury to Bruce Brown. He's having knee surgery, reevaluated in a few weeks. We'll see when he's able to come back in the lineup, but one would expect he's going to be out until at least, early mid-November as he ramps up, maybe a little bit longer than that. With that, I ask you, what's more likely? The rookie Jacoby Walter earns a season-long rotation job while Bruce Brown is out, or Ochai Agbaji does. I think the main expectation here is those guys will fill in the gaps a little bit while Bruce is out, and then Bruce will come back in, and those guys will probably get excised. But is there a world in which one of these guys plays well enough that they earn themselves minutes for the rest of the season alongside Bruce Brown once he returns, and then once Bruce Brown inevitably gets traded, stays in the rotation beyond that as well? Which of these two guys is more likely to pop while Bruce Brown sits? It's always tough to ask a rookie to do that, but I kind of think I'm going with Walter on this one. I want to hear what you think, though.
I'm going with Walter as well. I do think that Ochai is going to get the first nod because this might be the most crucial stretch of his career if he does, because that's an opportunity where we weren't even really sure if he would get minutes, but that'd be an opportunity to show that he can be a plus on both ends of the court, because we're so worried about his offense and it being 4-on-5 and him not being able to shoot or contribute anything offensively. So if he does get that opportunity, this would be his moment to show something. I'm not sure if he will. So with that being said, even if Jacoby Walter doesn't get minutes right away, or maybe he starts in the G League or something, I feel like he will eventually get that opportunity, and he will have a longer rope, because, he's a rookie and the expectations are not all that high, but I feel like he could play enough to outplay Ochai and hold on to a rotation spot for the rest of the season. So I am going to go with Walter. And from a upside perspective, I would probably want to see more of what Walter can bring to the table. I feel like I kind of know what Ochai would bring to the table, unless he surprises me this season. So I'm gonna go with the rookie here.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because Ochai Agbaji, by all intents and purposes, should have the clear inside track on earning a rotation job here. He's the third-year guy. He's got a little bit more experience. He has theoretical skills, this Raptors team, but that's the thing with Ochai Agbaji, is it's always theoretical. The three-point shooting has always been theoretical and exclusively resigned to the corners. The defense, I think, even has been more theoretical than actually good in practice. And so if he's not doing the things that he's theoretically supposed to be out there for, and he is, as you said, creating 4-on-5 situations on offense just because defenses don't care about him. He's not doing much when the ball swings to him. He's not keeping the thing flowing, as I think the Darko Rajakovic offense is entirely designed to do. I do think we could see a guy like Jacoby Walter really pop if he were to get those minutes in place of Agbaji. And it's not like pop like, oh, he's going to be on an all-rookie team. It's pop in comparison to Ochai Agbaji and kind of do the things that you'd hope that Agbaji can do. The 34% three-point shooting for Walter in college, I don't care about. He was taking tough looks on a team that, he was a big featured part of. I think the looks he's going to get with the Raptors are going to be a lot more sort of in flow, in rhythm, off the catch, flying off screens, in a position to sort of optimize his shooting dynamism, which I think is the reason why the Raptors took him. I think the fact that he can be sort of a similar type of player to what Grady Dick is the feature of why they took him. I think his skill set meshes in particular very well with Scotty Barnes, very well with Jakob Poeltl and all the elbow actions they run and the split actions they like to play with. I think it might not go perfectly all the time, and there's a chance that when Bruce Brown comes back, he's just not in the rotation. He goes down to the G League and all of that. But of these two guys, I think the skill set for Walter is a little bit more tantalizing and a little bit more suited to how the Raptors play. Not to mention he's a guy with like rim pressure ability and stuff like that. Did you have something you want to chip in?
Yeah, it reminds me of Summer League, where Jamba was making it like a mandate for him to work on his catch and shoot opportunities, which is kind of what the Raptors would want him to do with Quickly and Scotty, guys like that, creating opportunities for him to catch and shoot it, as opposed to doing things off the dribble himself. So when you talk about him getting better looks than he was at Baylor, that would add to that fact.
Here's a little fun hypothetical for you, not related to our what's more likely. So Grady Dick was a rookie last year. We know this. He got some run early in the season, went down to the G League, ended up playing 60 games for the Raptors, and was like a big part of the rotation down the stretch. Would you take the over or under on 60 games played for Walter for the Raptors this season?
Oh, that's a good question. Shoot,
I'm a pro, man.
I'm gonna take the over. I do think he spends probably a good 10-ish games in the G League, 10, 15. But I'll price is right this and say like 61. So I'll take the over.
$61, Bob. It's tough because in theory there's a lot of competition for his spot.
Right.
I just don't think the competition's all that stiff. And I think we're probably going to see Bruce Brown get traded at some point. And so we're looking at kind of a window I think Walter will get some run early in the year. I think he'll get run post-deadline. It's kind of about that window between, late mid-November, early December, whenever Bruce Brown can get back in the lineup. Is Jacoby Walters still part of the plans there? And
Right.
I think because of the needs this team has just for shooting and off-ball, just off-ball stuff and diversions to kind of detract or distract away from what the defense is doing for the core guys, I think he's just going to find himself playing. Will he be effective? Probably not. Rookies are not effective. Grady Dick got absolutely crunched in his minutes last year. Still played 60 games, though, and played, near 1,300 minutes. Maybe Walter doesn't play that many minutes. Maybe he's not getting the 25 minutes a night Grady Dick was by the end of last season. But I think there's a role for him on this team that really, if there is going to be any semblance of like a good functioning bench on this squad, I think it's going to have to entail rookies and young guys kind of popping, because I don't see Chris Boucher being a big part of the plans. I don't know how well Davion Mitchell's going to acclimatize. There are limits to what Kelly Olynyk's going to be able to do for you. Bruce Brown obviously has the injury coming in, even though I think he can be an effective role player once he's back and healthy. I just think the skill set Walter has is going to be needed, and I think he's more physically prepared for the NBA than Grady Dick was last year too, even though, yes, he's still like 19, 20 years old. I think he just kind of has more of an NBA-ready body, and so I think they'll throw him to the Wolves and see. Like, this is what this season's about, right? Is giving the young dudes a chance, and just shooting is at a premium on this roster. It's something they're clearly prioritizing in the way they're building this team, and I don't see the reason not to get started on kind of building those chemistry connections between Scotty Barnes and Walter, or Quickly and Walter, or Pirtle and Walter, and all of that. So I'm taking the over two. I think we're going to see a lot of Jacoby Walter, and they'll probably lose a lot of minutes when he's on the floor, because that's how rookies do. We're going to come back on the other side, Jamar, close it out with a question about the trade deadline. What are the Raptors going to be up to? Are they going to trade off all of their assets that aren't weighed down and some of them that aren't weighed down? Or are they going to go and buy? We'll get to that coming up in just 1 second. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, the #1 sportsbook in North America. And NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So it's easy. Hey, game's happening. Ooh, this thing's happening that I want to throw some money down on. You can go to the app, you can play around with it, and you can put some money down and hopefully win some bucks if that is your thing. Not much of a wager, but when I do, I'm throwing a little money down on a long odds future that I feel good about. The most notable example of this being a couple years ago when I got the Denver Nuggets at like 19-1 to win the championship, and I felt so good about that the entire year up until they won the championship at the end of the year. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet over at FanDuel. Go check them out. That's FanDuel.com, the #1 sportsbook in North America and the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. Closing things out with our final What's More Likely here with Jamar Hinds from Raptors Republic, as we take a look at the long view, at least the sort of medium long view between now and February when the NBA trade deadline kicks in. Surely, because of the way all of our brains are wired, we'll be thinking about the trade deadline as soon as like the first preseason game is played. So why not get a head start on it and start diving into it here today on September the 26th, like the little transaction poisoned piggies we are. So here's a question for you, Jamar. What's more likely? The Toronto Raptors trade away 3 or more veterans by the NBA trade deadline, or make a buying move at the deadline? And by buying move, I'm saying like future pick outlay, some sort of future asset, young player for an incoming guy, whatever it might be. That is kind of how I'd classify this. The type of player they bring in, totally up to your imagination. But that's the sort of concept of a buying trade, where future assets are going out in exchange for someone who is more ready to play right now. And look, there's lots of vets on this team who could be traded. Bruce Brown is one. Kelly Olynyk, I think, is a stealth candidate if things go really wrong for this team and a contender really wants some shooting and playmaking. Jakob Pirtle is someone who I think a lot of Raptors fans kind of have their eyes on. I don't think they should trade him. I think that would be stupid. You're taking steps back for the sake of it, but that's going to be something that's talked about. Chris Boucher is out there as well. Davion Mitchell even out there on an expiring contract. And I think he qualifies as a veteran now, having played 3 seasons. But what's your read on this, Jamar?
Hey,
more likely the Raptors do a big sell or they buy.
You can even add Garrett Temple to that list. Don't forget about him.
You could add Garrett Temple to that list. The veteran of all veterans.
I can't see them buying, and that would be a great way to piss off Raptors fans for the most part.
Because they would lose their mind.
Yeah, because that has been a big conversation over the last couple of years. Most notably, the Jakob trade where they attached the first to get him, and there's another move where I think they gave away a first. I can't remember.
The Thad trade that everyone gets real mad about, even though it's basically a non-trade to worry about because it's all a wash at this point. But yes.
But yeah,
not worried about Malachi Branham.
That would be a great way to piss off Raptors fans. And I don't think they'd be in a position where they're hovering around pretender mode or even close to contender mode. That's the teams that normally make a move at the trade deadline. So I don't think they'd be in that tier. So it would have to be the vets that could potentially be traded. And you mentioned Boucher. I agree with you on Jakob. Although some people wanted to, move away from that, I don't think it would be the smartest move. But we've talked about Bruce Brown, where we're expecting that to happen at some point. I mentioned Temple. I don't totally. I mean, I guess we differ on Mitchell because he's still on his rookie contract, right?
In the last year of it, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. If you're on your rookie contract, I don't really consider you a vet. But I mean, that's up to
semantics, baby.
That's up to interpretation. But I could see three of those guys being moved much more than I could see them making a move. And I just that would get pretty ugly. I'm on Twitter a lot. I don't want to see that again. There's been too many debates.
Number one is get off Twitter, man.
I can't. It's so entertaining. Good. It's so entertaining.
Is it?
Do it.
Is it? Or is it brain melting?
Entertaining / toxic, but I'm like, I'd have like fear of missing out if I wasn't on Twitter. So I'm here for the long haul.
For baby. Come hang out in the Discord. There's no missing out in there. Just you still get the endorphins from people agreeing with you, and also people disagree a lot, but they don't scream at you meanly like they do on Twitter. There's a plug for the Discord. I am going to disagree with you, Jamar.
Really? Okay.
I think it's more likely they make some kind of buying trade, and there's a caveat here. Look, neither of these are likely. This is the game, of course. I think trading 3 vets is pretty unlikely. I don't think there's going to be a huge market for Chris Boucher. I don't think they're going to trade Jakob Poeltl. And I think if it gets to the point where they are trading 3 or more vets, like things have gone so disastrously wrong that I just can't see it going that poorly. Maybe the schedule at the top is really hard. We know this. But yeah, what's up?
I mean, when we talk about trading vets, they could just be in a throw-in where they get waived. That still counts. So it doesn't mean that they, just could be a market for like a guy. There's no market for Garrett Temple, and there's not really a market for Boucher, but they could be a throw-in to make salaries work, and then they get waived or whatever. So that still counts to me.
Yeah, that's fair. I just think, in that case, if they're trading Chris Boucher, I think that's more probably in a buying move as a salary matching thing, right? Because like if you're not getting much for him, it's probably attach a pick to Boucher and bring someone in. But the reason I think it's more likely they make a buying trade is I think we're how many months removed from them trading a first round pick for Kelly Olynyk, despite being totally out of it. Like this is what they do. They target guys.
The first round pick. Yeah, I knew there was.
They target guys. Like if they want a guy and they think they can retain him, they'll do that. This is their MO. This is what they've done throughout the entire run of Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster. Maybe it makes less sense to do when you're not a good team versus when you are a good team, like they did with, say, Serge Ibaka back in the day. But this is a thing that they have done. There's a track record of them making these sort of bizarro deals that look like buys, even though they're kind of out of it. The Jakob Poeltl thing also applies to this logic too. I also think, Jamar, the reason I think it's more likely they do a buy trade is that I think it would be in the interest of adding a player who is ready to help this core and is on the same timeline now. And I think a guy who stands out to me as someone the Raptors should be calling up every single day and offering something for: the Pacers pick protected in the lottery in a couple of years, the Blazers second rounder this year, whatever it might be. I think Moses Moody is someone the Raptors should be all over if the Warriors are not trying to pay him. He's 22 years old.
Okay.
He is a 3-and-D wing in sort of like the idealized version of what he can be. He's exactly what this team needs to fill out lineups and sort of elongate and give some insulation on the wings for RJ Barrett, for Scotty Barnes. And I think he's someone they should be all over. And we've seen them do this, right? Like they did this with Ochai Agbaji. Young guy, still on the rookie deal. Davion Mitchell applies too. I think Moses Moody's a cut or two above those guys as just like a talent that I believe in. But like this is a thing they've done. And I think if the Warriors are going to be sort of cheap and frugal about not paying Moody, he's not getting opportunity because they have 1,000 guys vying for minutes on that team. I think he's someone, a guy of that ilk, maybe not getting a huge opportunity elsewhere. They did this with Emmanuel quickly as well. They prioritized getting players back for OG Anunoby and RJ Barrett too, obviously. I just think it's in their DNA to go and try to upgrade the team and help what they got now. Pacers pick in 2026 is not going to be a useful, good player till like 2029 if everything kind of breaks perfectly. They got to get guys to supplement this roster now. And so that's the kind of buying move I could see them making.
Okay. With Moody, I was going to say he plays basically the same position as Walter. Would that deter them a little bit? I don't know.
Can you have enough 3-and-D wings? Like, I don't think you can, right? I think he can play the 3. I think he'd be more of like an RJ Barrett backup. Or right now, Ochai Agbaji looks like the RJ Barrett backup. So that's kind of how I'm like, I would rather have a team where you're kind of spoiled for choice when it comes to guys who can shoot threes and defend versus, well, we can only have one of those guys because of competition. Like, no, have lots of guys like that. You can always move off guys down the line. You're not good enough at this point to be worried about positional overlap. Just get good young players in. And a guy like Moody, I think, really stands out. They should be 100% trying to make a push for that. And shout out to Matt T in the Locked On Raptors Discord, who has been pushing Moody for like months and months and months. He was right. It's a thing they should be 100% doing with the position that they're in as a team right now. So it's not going to be that they go buy some veteran. It's not going to be a win now move for a guy who's going to help push them to the playoffs or anything like that. Although it could, indirectly do that. But I think giving up a future asset for a guy who can help now and be part of the team for the next few years, totally on the table. And I think they should probably be doing that. Like I encourage that. This is not your Jakob Poeltl buy move. It's a different kind of buy move.
Okay. I was thinking more so along the veteran move. So that would make more sense.
Just making a big win now trade for Miles Turner if the Pacers have a tough time. That's where the fan base loses their minds for sure. They'll lose their minds at the sheer thought of trading a pick or the mere thought of trading a pick for anybody, even if it's like a young, useful player who is probably better than what that pick will become because people have pick brain. But I think that's the kind of move I'd be very happy to see them make. Any parting thoughts on the idea of the Raptors making a win now move? There's another player out there you kind of have your eye on as like one of those young, maybe underutilized, not a ton of opportunity guys that maybe the Raptors could go take a swing on.
I don't know. It's funny. As you were asking me that question, I don't even know why he came to mind because he's only in his second year. I don't. Why am I thinking? This is just the Nuggets fan in me. Why am I thinking about Julian Strawther? I don't know. But
can you piece together enough salaries to get Julian Strawther while sending Bruce Brown back? Like, is it like a buy and like a? I guess that's more of a sell move if you're the Raptors, but I think the semantics on that could be argued for sure.
I really like him as a shooter, but whatever.
Another guy. Look, I already denigrated this guy earlier on the podcast, but Jaden Ivey, feels like he's kind of been on the outs with the Pistons for years now. And
the whole thing with him was weird with Monty Williams, where basically he preferred Killian Hayes over Jaden Ivey. He's only played 2 seasons. So now in his third year, different coach, maybe he gets back into. He's out of the doghouse now, and they see the potential with him and Cade and Jaden Ivey backcourt, which is what people were expecting until Monty preferred Killian Hayes instead.
Yeah, I just wonder if maybe the fit there is not great.
Yeah, the fit
shooting for Ivey and the lack of shooting for all of the other young players on that team.
Who knows? Maybe he developed that this offseason. Who knows?
Maybe. Yeah. Just kicking around ideas again. I'm not like super sold on Jaden Ivey, but he's
Right.
been a good stats, terrible team guy. Maybe there's something there. Of course, the Raptors could use some extra guard play and some juice in the backcourt. So as much as I'm not much of a Jaden Ivey believer, I'd be all right if the Raptors took a shot on him for sure. Because I don't know everything. I'm a dum-dum. We'll leave it there though. Jamar, anything you want to promote for the good people out there?
You can just follow me if you like, Jamar BHJAMARBH on Twitter. Coming in October, as we already mentioned, some of my game recaps and especially previews are going to be coming back out on Raptors Republic, so just look out for that.
Hell yeah. Everyone keep an eye out for the God of the Game recap back in the swing of things very soon. We're going to leave it there. We'll be back again tomorrow with Kelly Dwyer from the Second Arrangement. Going to have some fun talking about the Raptors and sort of his view on the team and watching bad basketball. The man is a guy who can elicit joy, pull joy, glean joy from any basketball team that plays basketball. So we're going to talk to Kelly about how to enjoy this maybe not very good Toronto Raptors team this season, among other things. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much for hanging out, and we'll talk to you again on Friday with another episode of Locked On Raptors. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. See ya. Thanks for hanging. Bye-bye.
I keep forgetting about this. And
oh my God, it's so bad, Jamar. I'm on a terrible run.